If there's an industrialist most Indians have heard about, then it's likely to be a Birla. For 75 years and more, the name has been a symbol for money, power and success. The present Mr. Birla is only 33, but his friends say he's likely to take the family fortunes to a new height. So what is he like and what does he make of his job? Today is your chance to find out as I introduce you to Kumar Mangalam Birla. Welcome to the program, Kumar.
Thanks, Karan.
Now, 5.5 years ago, you took over the Aditya Birla Group in very tragic circumstances. It was an awesome responsibility, and yet you were barely 28. Were you apprehensive?
Of course I was apprehensive, but I think I also had the faith that things would work out well. I had the faith in what my father had taught me. I had the faith in my education. And I'm also a bit of a fatalist, which I think helps on occasions, such as this. So, but I was optimistic as well.
You know, I suppose it's a bit like being thrown into the deep end of a pool. Were you ever scared or worried that I may not be able to swim as well as I need to?
Oh, very often. I thought of that very often. But, you know, that was just a phase and it would pass. And, you know, I just sort of said to myself that I have to hang in there.
Were you conscious of the fact that you were under the close scrutiny of the whole corporate world? That in a sense you were on test?
I was aware of it, Karan, but I didn't think too much about it. I was so absorbed with work and there was so much to be done and so much to be looked into that fortunately I didn't get too much time to brood over it.
Of course, many people in fact were saying to themselves, maybe not to you, maybe he won't do it. They were sort of in a sense looking for signs of failure. Did that worry you or unnerve you?
No, actually I think there were a lot of people who were actually rooting for me and who were hoping and praying that I'd make it. And they were the people I'd, you know, looked to more than the few critics who,
and their support, in a sense, gave you strength?
Absolutely. I think that their support at that point in time was very critical to me.
At the end of the day, of course, you were stepping into the shoes of someone who wasn't just your father. He was also an extremely illustrious businessman, perhaps the best of his generation. And yet, being younger, you clearly would have wanted to do things your own way. Was that a difficult tightrope to walk?
It was. I mean, he was a very strong personality. He was a very successful businessman. But also, Karan, he'd imbued in us a sense of independence and a sense of having our own identity, which was very important to me. And I wasn't trying to be an iconoclast, but I was doing things which I thought were right for the moment, and also from a longer-term perspective for the organization. It was difficult because I think people needed to understand why things were being done differently, and we spent a lot of time communicating around that.
In fact, there were two things in particular that were striking innovations you introduced. One was what was called the 360-degree feedback operation program, so that people could tell you what they thought of you. And the other was, in a sense, your personal involvement in recruiting straight from business school. Would your father have approved of that?
I think he would have. I think, you know, he was a great innovator. He was a great lateral thinker, and I think when he saw a new idea and a good idea, he jumped at it, and I think he would have really liked both of this, actually.
How much of a chance did he get to actually prepare you for the succession?
Well, ever since he got to know of his illness, he sort of made a conscious effort to make sure that I got exposed to the various parts of the organization. I'd sit in on meetings with him, you know, for all the units, all parts of the business. I was already responsible for a significant part of the organization.
In fact, forgive me, sitting in on meetings began almost when you were in college, didn't it? You had an apprenticeship in your college days, virtually. You'd come and join him in the afternoon.
Absolutely, and I think that was great learning, Karan, because I spent many hours, you know, for a couple of years, just sitting with him and observing him.
And you'd sit in total silence, just sit and watch and learn?
Well, no, I'd actually butt in quite often and ask questions, and, you know, I think at that age you're much sort of less conscious of things, and that helped because he encouraged me to ask questions, and I learned a lot in the process.
Were you very close to him?
Oh yes, of course, we were very close. I respected him a great deal, and therefore there's always, I think, some amount of distance in a father-son relationship, but we had a very strong bond between us.
Your grandfather says that when you were a young baby, Your father would come back often early from office so that he could bathe you and sometimes even feed you.
Yeah, I believe so. I think that that's so wonderful. I wish I could do that with my kids.
You can't? Or you don't?
Well,
Or you
I
won't?
think, you know, he had a way with children which I don't, and he had a knack when he was with children. He really sort of behaved like a child himself almost.
Now, in 1974, I believe you were barely 6, you got meningitis. I gather he took 2 months off office so that he could be with you.
That's right.
Do you remember that period?
No, Karan, I have no memories at all of that period. But all I know was that, you know, it's all a sort of a blur now, but I know that it was a bad phase, and the whole family held together beautifully and pulled through it.
Now, it was during that period when he was, in a sense, by your bedside that he began painting, didn't he?
That's right.
So would he often sit beside you and paint?
He would. I think that was a good way to, you know, shift the focus, and you know, it was a good sort of a stress reliever for him then.
16 years later, you repaid the compliment because you encouraged him to hold his first exhibition.
He was actually very shy about doing that, and he'd had a pretty nice body of work by then, most of which were, of course, copies of masterpieces, but very good all the same. And you know, we kind of egged him on to show his work, and that actually was quite a hit.
You mentioned his illness. I gather, in fact, he discovered he had cancer almost by accident. He was responding to an ad he'd seen in Washington Airport.
That's right. We were on this road show for a GDR issue for Hindalco, and he sort of casually mentioned reading about this ad, and didn't tell us about any symptoms that he had himself. It's only when we came back to Bombay that he told us about it, and you know, then sort of things then moved quite fast after that.
In fact, very fast, because 6 weeks later, John Hopkins confirmed the diagnosis and probably his own suspicion. How do you recall the day when he actually had to break the sad news to you?
That Karan was, you know, that was heart-wrenching, and it's the sort of time when you suddenly feel you feel alone and exposed and very vulnerable, and quite all sorts of feelings, really. I mean, of you know, fear, of just wanting to hold on and not let go of someone.
It was a complete shock to you.
Absolutely.
Over the next 2 years, you actually saw your father visibly and rapidly deteriorate in front of your eyes, and there was absolutely nothing that you could do to help. How difficult was that for you to cope with?
Well, in a sense, that was, you know, a very difficult phase, of course. But also, he was very brave about it, and he fought it very bravely. And that gave us a lot of courage. And, you know, he kept, sort of kept up his spirits. He'd, you know, make sure that we'd all be, you know, cheerful, and he...
So instead of you tending to him, he was tending to all of you. He was making sure that the family stayed strong.
Yes, absolutely. He sort of went out about his normal routine as if things were all hunky-dory, and he actually, you know, helped us all pull through it in a sense.
At any point during those 2 years, did you ever come to accept that he was going to die, or were you hoping for a miracle right to the end?
No, Karan, I actually never thought he'd die, and I, you know, always thought, even the last few days, that something would happen and he'd be all right. It's only in the morning that he passed away, that, you know, that we sort of had to face up to the fact that he didn't have too much time, and that things were deteriorating very rapidly.
Your grandfather says that during those last terrible weeks, you began reading the Hanuman Chalisa to him practically every day. Did that help you?
Well, I think it was a family thing, you know, sort of the whole family sitting together and praying every evening. And that was a great feeling of solace and comfort for all of us.
He must have given you a lot of advice, knowing himself that what he was saying would last with you for a long time. Is it true that just before he died, there were some special words he said to you?
Well, just before he went into a coma, he told my mother and my sister and me to be brave. And he said that, he had achieved a lot in life, and God had given him much more than he could have ever hoped for or imagined. And that life is to be enjoyed, and that we should have no regrets at all.
And in a sense, he was saying, you must get over this that's happening to you and lead your own life.
Absolutely.
Don't keep looking back.
Absolutely.
He was giving you, in fact, the right sort of advice. He was already anticipating the sense of loss and the horrible vacuum you'd feel. And he was holding your hand and taking you across that awful moment.
Yes, I think he was doing his duty as a father even then, which is quite remarkable.
But as you said, he went into a coma before he died. For 2 weeks before he died, he was in a coma. Did you miss a chance to actually say goodbye properly?
No, not really. I think, that would have been very, very painful.
And then when he died, there was this awful personal loss on the one hand, and the terrific onerous responsibility suddenly on the other. Where did you begin?
Well, actually, the onerous responsibility that you talk about was actually for me at that point in time like the great escape, because so much had happened in those last few months, and I just needed to, all of us actually just needed to move on, and as he would have liked. And so that really was the great escape.
Work was a solace.
Absolutely.
In fact, you threw yourself into it. Be brave for you became just do a job and keep on doing it.
Absolutely. I think the day after we were in Bombay was the cremation, and the morning after that I was at work. And I think that that actually helped to a large extent.
Come on, let's take a break. I want to come back in part 2 and talk about the other side of your life. What it was like growing up as a Birla boy, and how today you look upon yourself.
Sure.
We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Stick with us. Welcome back. My guest is Kumar Mangalam Birla. Let's talk about you personally, Kumar. You were an only child for the first 9 years of your life.
That's right.
Were you spoiled?
No, Karan, not at all. I was doted upon by the whole family. There was a lot of love, warmth. It was like being in a cocoon, but I was never spoiled.
You had a dad who adored you, so who disciplined you?
Well, my mom disciplined me, and also I think my dad and my grandfather and my great-grandfather, they all doted on me and were very fond of me, but they all had their do's and don'ts as well, so there's always a flip side to that.
And you learned the do's and don'ts pretty quickly.
Oh, very quickly. I knew how far I could stretch, with each one of them.
So long before corporate strategy came child strategy.
I think kids are much smarter at doing that today, actually.
And do your kids do that with you in turn
All the
now?
time, all the time. They've got me foxed all the time.
And are you as indulgent as your father was? I know you said in part 1 you were more shy, but are you as indulgent?
Well, yeah, I think I am.
You know, being an only child can often be lonely as well. Were there moments of loneliness being the only son in a big house with parents who clearly had a lot of other things to do?
Not really, Karan. My mother was a full-time mother, and she'd decided that she'd spend all the time, till the children grew up, to be with us, and I think there was a great support in the growing up years.
Your parents, I know, used to take you to see lots of films when you were young. Do you remember the sort of things you went and saw?
Not really, but we spent a lot of time together on weekends. We'd go to the movies, we had a place at Juhu that we'd go to very often. So the weekends were for the family, and my father spent all of Saturday and Sunday with us, which was a very nice scene.
So you grew up knowing that weekends would be time with Daddy.
Absolutely.
Was it a very close, self-sufficient family?
It was. It still is actually very self-sufficient and very sort of happy with ourselves and in ourselves. But also, there was a lot of friends and a lot of fun and laughter, which was nice.
Your grandfather says that he was a precocious child, even capable of being naughty.
What does he say?
Were you that first, tell me?
Well, I'm not so sure about that, really.
Which bit? Company chairman can't be naughty? He says that there was a particular occasion when your grandmother took you to see a school in Calcutta run by the family. Do you
Right.
remember it?
Well, that's apocryphal actually, but what
It's
I'm
Granddaddy's
told
favorite
is
story.
that my grandmother took me to see this school, and she actually wanted me to start studying there, and she took me around the whole school and kept telling me how wonderful it was. And at the end of it, I said to her, you know, if you like it so much, why don't you stay back, and I'm going right back home. And I've never heard the end of it since then.
So that's become grandfather's favorite story. He tells
It has,
everyone.
it has.
Huh? Your father took a very close interest in your education. Is that one reason why at the same time as doing a BCom degree, you also did a degree in chartered accountancy?
Well, we'd actually discussed it and talked about it a lot, and what we felt was both he and I, we both felt that the CA would be a very good foundation, and which it was, and so we felt that why not use the time to also do a CA degree, and I sort of did that simultaneously with
He certainly
graduation.
believed in flogging you, didn't he?
He did. He made me work very hard, actually.
And are you a whiz with figures? They say, all your colleagues say that you can look at a sheet of figures and make an awful lot out of them.
Well, I wish I was a whiz, but I'm quite comfortable with numbers.
They don't throw you.
No, they don't.
All types of figures or only those on a piece of paper?
Only those on a piece of paper.
Now, in 1980,
My wife is going to be watching this,
so you can't admit to anything else. In 1989, you got married to your wife, Neerja. Where and how did you meet?
We met through a common friend. We didn't know their family at all. And we come from very different backgrounds, actually. And, there was this... She was actually in the same school as my sister. And she was head girl of the school. And my sister, of course, knew about her. I didn't. And there was this common friend who told my parents about her. And my sister immediately perked up and said, yes, of course, I know about her. She's been, she was head girl of my school. And that's how the whole thing started off.
You were 21 at the time. I know it was an arranged marriage, but did your father have to persuade you very hard?
He did. I took some time to make up my mind. But
What was the problem? You thought you were too young?
I thought I was too young, and, what was the hurry and things like that. But I think things worked out well.
Now, today you have two children of your own. Is
That's
your family life as a father and a husband very different to what it was like when you were a son?
Not really, but I think that our generation of fathers is, more involved with the children on a day-to-day basis.
So are you your son's friend?
Well, I keep trying to be, and he keeps discounting me all the time.
Are you as tough with him? Do you make sure that he studies as...
No. I think the tables are turned. He's quite tough on me now.
So he takes daddy for a ride as often as he can?
Absolutely. So does my daughter.
Do they succeed?
All the time.
They say that Kumar Mangalam Birla is an introvert. You don't look like one to me.
I am an introvert. I think I like, I like spending time with myself. I like being with a few friends. I'm not the sort of person who'd love to party and be out every night. So in many ways, I am an introvert.
What do you mean when you say you like spending time with yourself? I mean, do you actually need time completely on your own?
I think I need my own space. I need some time every day to be with myself and, to think of things I'd like to be doing and how I'd like to do things differently.
So does that mean that even when you're at home with the family, you like your own space?
I do. I think that's very important to me.
Are you a bit of a recluse as well as being private?
No, I'm not a recluse at all, but I am a private person.
And that privacy is important to you?
Very important.
Do the family understand it?
Oh, absolutely. I think they understand that and they respect that and they give me a lot of my own space.
Now, you are probably one of the richest people in the country. What does money mean to a very, very rich man?
Well, I think money is more a means rather than an end. And we were brought up with this concept of trusteeship, that we are actually trustees. And the work we're doing is on behalf of the shareholders of the company. And that's something that has stayed on very strongly.
But how do you spend your wealth? I mean, do you like cars or clothes or nice holidays, or are those things not important to you?
Well, no, of course, one likes to have at least one nice holiday a year, and one is fond of splurging once in a while, but I think that's only very occasional. It's not really a lifestyle.
So then what motivates you? Because clearly money can't be a motivation. What drives you to work harder and harder?
Well, I think that for a small part, and a very small part actually, I think it's a sense of duty. But I think for a very large part, it's a sense of fulfillment. It's a sense of wanting to grow as a person, as an individual, as a professional. And the sense of excitement and the sense of challenge is so tremendous that I think that's just what keeps me going.
Do you respond well to challenges?
I think I sort of intuitively would, like to take up a challenge. It sort of comes to me almost automatically.
So if there's a difficult choice and an easy one, you'll go for the difficult one?
Oh, all the time. I did that in school also. When we had exams and if there was a choice in the paper, I'd take the tough question.
Does that make it very difficult to be a businessman? I mean, aren't you always setting yourself challenges that perhaps you don't need to set?
Well, that's true, but that's also, that's also what keeps the sense of challenge alive all the time. And I think that's very important to me.
And at the end of the day, when you put your head down on your pillow, what is it that gives you a sense of satisfaction?
The fact that I've done my best. And if there are days when, one hasn't really been able to do much and to achieve what one had set out to achieve for the day, then I don't sleep very well.
You go to bed frustrated that night?
I do.
A sense of personal unhappiness?
Absolutely.
In which case, tell me, what's more important to you? Being successful or being good?
Well, I actually don't see that as an either-or situation. I think you can be both. And, I have 3 role models in front of me, my father, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather. And, I think all of them have been very successful and at the same time very good.
Successful you definitely are. Would you say you're good?
Well, I think for a large part of me I am.
And I won't embarrass you by asking you about the other part. Thank you for talking to me, Kumar. Thank you for
Thanks
a
so much,
wonderful
sir.
interview. Thanks, sir.